Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Green Bay Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Joined alongside Jacob in Wisconsin here to talk Packers as the Combine is wrapping up and about to head right into free agent frenzy. We are live on YouTube, X, and Rumble right now. You can also check this out in podcast form. Just search for Packernet Podcast wherever you get your podcast. Jacob, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Just got off work in time to run over, change my shirt into this lovely attire, and I'm here to talk some ball with you. It could be what a better way to spend a Monday.
I'm telling you, man. I can think of a few ways to have a better Monday, but yeah. It is what it is, right? Let's jump into the news, man. As we had a little bit of news break earlier today, as our good buddy Rob Westerman had tweeted out over at Green Bay Packer Daily. Breaking news: the Packers are re-signing linebacker Isaiah McDuffie on a 2-year, $8 million deal with upside to $9.5 million per Jeremy Fowler. So Isaiah McDuffie is the pick of the two so far. Obviously, you had Eric Wilson set to hit free agency. You had Isaiah McDuffie set to hit free agency. This isn't a huge surprise to me, but I do want to give a shout out to our buddy Chris N. I think he's in the chat. I've already seen him. He had put in the Patreon group over where we asked questions in the Patreon group. He has said, Clayton, 2 years, $8 million for Isaiah McDuffie. I like him as a teammate. Seems to be an all-in 100 guy. But that's too much, though, for a guy that really struggles in pass coverage. Probably means we lose Eric Wilson. I would have chosen Eric Wilson over Isaiah McDuffie. Just my opinion. Do you know details? How much is guaranteed? What are your overall thoughts on the deal and players? So appreciate that, Chris. Thank you for supporting the show. And by the way, we did hear from Jordan Taylor, so we're getting that autographed LVN jersey sent off to him. Appreciate everybody in the Patreon group for supporting here. Chris, there's a couple of different ways you can look at this, obviously. I think I was on board with you. I've been pretty vocal about it all offseason. I would rather have Eric Wilson than McDuffie. That's just me. I think he showed a little bit more than Isaiah McDuffie did this year. Now, you got to look at the player and say, okay, what do they do well? Which you really hit the nail on the head. He sucked in pass coverage, and he was pretty stout in run defense, right? Spot Track has the placeholders put in place on his contract, so we still don't know all the details exactly how that's going to break down. It sounds like it's going to be incentive-based, though, Jacob, with him being able to make as much as $9.5 million. If I had to guess, I would say somewhere between $2 to $4 million guaranteed, something like that. But I could be wrong, and they may have felt like they needed to be a little more aggressive with Isaiah McDuffie. Now, some of the numbers here, real quick, and I want to get your take on it, Jacob. McDuffie had a 16% stop rate. That was actually second on the team amongst linebackers. He actually had a higher stop percentage rate than Quay Walker did. And you guys know what that means. Stop is I had it wrote down here at one point. It's basically on plays that end in a negative EPA, meaning a positive play for the defense. He was the guy who stopped the ball carrier. Okay, that's what that means. 90% of that statistic is run defense. Now, passer rating when targeted, 124.1. Let me put that into perspective for you guys. Out of all the linebackers in the league, the stack backers, I want to say he was third worst in the entire league in passer rating when targeted, when you remove the minimal snap guys, right? So really, really bad in pass coverage. Pretty stout with run defense. PFF grades, Jacob. And this is working back, working I think 22, 23, and then 24 grades, 58, 57, 55. According to PFF, he's got more every year. On the surface, I really don't like this signing, but if you were to say, okay, Clayton, how much would you sign him for them? I'd say $2 million, okay? So now we're talking about the difference of $2 million. That's nothing against the cap. So it's obvious that Goody wanted to keep him. He's one of his guys, right, that he drafted. I'm sure Jeff Hafley had a say in it because he played for Boston College, and they seem to like McDuffie a little more than we do. But go ahead, Jacob. What do you think about this, man?
Yeah, it's it's a little bit tough for me because I actually really do like Eric Wilson, but I've always had kind of a soft spot for Isaiah McDuffie. He was a late round guy, as you said, a Boston College guy. Dude is rocking the grandpa haircut already, which I gotta respect. I saw flashes of him where I thought maybe he could have a higher floor than what I think he's actually ended up being. So I just, for that reason, I would have preferred Eric Wilson, obviously, just because I think Eric Wilson, he's just a physical freak. He's a locker room guy. He's really good on special teams. I don't know how much better or worse Isaiah McDuffie is on special teams, but I just have to believe he's not as good as Eric Wilson. Now, does that mean Eric Wilson was demanding more of a paycheck and that's why we went with McDuffie? I don't know, to be sure. Got to think about, so now we solidified 4 spots, right? With McDuffie and Hopper, and then obviously Quay and Edge Coop. So to me, that still means we're at least a couple more short, right?
At least one more short. I can see if a team running a 4-3 who stays in the nickel the majority of the time only wants to carry 5. I get that. I would feel more comfortable carrying 6, but obviously you carry 6, you got to cut another position, right? I think Holmes hit the nail on the head here, Jake. I'm glad you highlighted that. Goody DiCaprio strikes again. Wilson's also 31. Isaiah McDuffie is 25. I think he's going to be 26, I believe. I could be wrong there. So, yeah, I mean, he went younger here, and I'm with you. I think he showed flashes. $4 million, a little too much for me. But, again, you're talking about a difference of $2 million from where I would have him at, and they've got him. You can make that up with nothing against the cap. You know what I mean? So it's not that big of a deal, but I think what it does, it allows you to not have to press, not have to stress during the draft to grab another linebacker, though. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And I compared him to Eric Wilson's special teams. I don't have Eric Wilson's grades in front of me. I've just got McDuffie's, but his first year in 21 had like a 48 special teams grade, obviously not great. This last year he had a 64.2, decent, passable. To 2023, 67.7, but on the most snaps he's ever had in a season, in 2022 he had 261 total special team snaps. He was an 88.5. So he's shown that he can do it, at least be that type of contributor. I would almost guarantee, though, that if I pull up Wilson's special teams numbers, he's going to be quite better. Yeah.
And again, if we signed Wilson to this deal as opposed to McDuffie and he hits that wall, then you lose that whole, hey, maybe we haven't hit his ceiling yet, right? But, again, I don't think it's a horrible signing. I don't want to come off the wrong way. I'm just not like – I've seen a lot of people on Twitter going, yeah, this dude's solid. And I'm going, okay. I mean, I don't think he's a bad football player, but to pretend like he's
Clayton.
Do
you want to know Eric Wilson's special team grades?
Let's hear it, man.
Starting in 2017, he was a 90.2, then a 79.3, then a 69.8, then in 2020 a 90 flat. Then took a drop off definitely in 59.5 in 2021, but that's when he played for 2 different teams. Comes back to Green Bay in 2022 with a 91.7, 2023 76.6, and last year one of his worst seasons with a 73.7.
Yeah, and that might be, that might be their plan too, is to just run this back. They may bring back Eric Wilson too. The defense, guys, it was good. The defense was good. Like, it was a legit top 5, top 10 defense, somewhere in that range, depending on which metric you want to look at. The run defense was, what we say, it was second in the league, I think tied for second with yards per carry allowed. McDuffie was a big part of that. And I've seen some people online saying, yeah, it's not a bad deal for someone who's just going to be a part-time player. And I'm going, part-time? Hell, he played a lot of snaps last year.
Yeah.
Maybe they changed their mind on that this year, but last year I want to say, trying to think, McDuffie here. Where you at? I was looking at where he ranked earlier amongst the entire NFL here and trying to figure it up. Of course, NFL Pro just crapped out on me. Anyway, he had a ton of snaps. I want to say he had the second most snaps amongst all linebackers on the Packers roster, if I remember correctly. So let's see here if I slide down real quick. Let's go run D snaps. Run D snaps amongst linebackers. Actually, I stand corrected. Isaiah McDuffie had the most run defensive snaps. So you can't sit here and brag on the run defense and then pretend like he's not important when he had the most run defense snaps, right? And that's what he did well. So it all obviously begins and ends with the run game, according to Jeff Hafley. So I think it's an important thing to identify, okay, what does the player do well, and how did that correlate with how well the team played last year in that regard? So let's see here. Chuck Jaggers, a good floor for our linebacker, in my opinion. I think that's a good way of putting it, Chuck. But when you talk about, building the floor, like $4 million per, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just trying to compare it to other players that we paid $4 million to on a second contract. But Keyshawn Nixon was making, I think his cap hit was $4 million last year, but his average annual value was like $6 million. So it's a little bit cheaper than that. So maybe it is a good time. Maybe I just talked myself into it, Jake.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's outlandish. It's not a ton of money, but I think like you just said, you could talk yourself into it. You could talk yourself out of it. I think it's at this point, what type of Packer fan do you want to be, Clayton? Is the glass half empty or is it half full?
I try to be half full, but I tell you, man, reading these comments on X, it's tough. It is tough out here in these streets. Yeah. So there you go. There's your breaking news of the night. Isaiah McDuffie returning to Green Bay to play linebacker. All right, let's go back to the chat here. Chris N said, I went with acquiring a free agent. We need an improvement to Myers. It's time to compete for a Super Bowl now. I thought, ? Sounded like Ron Burgundy, didn't we? So he's obviously referring to the poll question of the night where I asked, if Josh Myers leaves Green Bay in free agency, which of these options do you like best at center? Draft his replacement, replace him with a free agent, move Elton Jenkins to center, or move Zach Tom to center. Right now, leading the way is draft his replacement. Second place is move Elton Jenkins to center. Third place is replace him with a free agent. And then move Zach Tom to center, only got 5%. So it's 46% draft his replacement. And then in a somewhat close second, move Elton Jenkins to center. Jacob, how would you answer that question, man, if we were to ask you that? And I'm going to try to find the poll question on Twitter.
That's a good question because I'd have to put an asterisk next to it and say I would go to free agency only if we could get Dahlman, right? And if he's the guy, then sign him, give him that money that I don't think is outlandish, even if I don't remember what we thought was fair, but anywhere from 8 to 12 million to my eyes, if he's a starting, and the way he graded out, what was he, like a top 10, at least top 5 graded center. So I'd go that as my 1A. 1B would be definitely draft. I've talked about it many times. There's 3 or 4 different guys that I think could be really plug and play type guys. I don't like the idea of moving Zach Tom there in any way. I'm okay with the idea of moving Elton there, depending on who we have behind him. Obviously thinking like a Jordan Morgan or, a couple of the other bigger, younger guys. Maybe still Nacho Libre surprises us and decides he needs to push to be in one of that starting 5. It just depends. It's too early. I mean, we can speculate, obviously, and a lot of it's going to obviously depend on the draft, how these guys, some of them are coming back from rehab, how they're going to take that either second-year step, third-year step, fourth-year step. We got a lot of guys that have potential, but who's going to put it all together? But this being said, man, I totally think I'd go free agent first, draft the replacement second, which is most likely in my eyes, and then Jenkins, Tom.
Got it. Chuck Jagger says, I don't like moving O-line if they're good where they are. Just keep it. Yeah, and here's the issue I keep coming back to. And the reason I asked this question is because I wanted to kind of see what fellow fans thought about it. Because it's easy to kind of get caught up in your own thoughts and you think, okay, here's the way to go, and you're completely missing the scenario or maybe what the majority thinks. But got our ass kicked by Philly because of the trenches. And mainly I'm talking about the interior, right? If it's just all right, and I've seen a lot of people say Jacob Monk's the guy. I'm like, y'all are giving me a lot of not people in our chat, but on Twitter, y'all giving me a lot of hope with Jacob Monk, man. I don't know what y'all seen. I don't think he played much, but whatever y'all seen, y'all think he's going to be a dog. Sign me up if that's the case. You're talking about being set at center for 3 years before you have to pay him. Man, that's a huge asset. I don't know if there's any merit to that, that comment. But on Twitter, I asked the same question. If Josh Myers leaves Green Bay in free agency, which of these options do you like best at center? First place is draft his replacement at 36.6%. Second is Elton Jenkins to center. That was 35.3%, so a little bit closer than our YouTube poll, but the same result. And then third and fourth place, a little bit closer than the YouTube poll, replaced with a free agent, 15.8%. And then, of course, moves Zach Tom to center, 12.3%. The one thing that's sticking out to me with these poll questions, Jacob, is no one wants Zach Tom at center. They want to keep him at tackle is what it seems like. Do you agree with that as well?
Yeah, I mean, that was my main thought was don't take away the pillar of the offensive line, which I believe he is.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. It really does, man. And when the Packers have good tackle play, they're competing. When a tackle goes down, like when we lost to the Niners in the playoffs that one year, people forget Bakhtiari went down that week in practice, right? We were without our left tackle, and we still almost beat them. Bakhtiari plays in that game. We probably beat them by a couple scores. I believe that because Aaron was kind of uncomfortable all night long. Yeah, I mean, you keep the tackles in place. Again, the tiers of importance, in my opinion, is blindside tackle. So it'd be left tackle. I really think right tackle should be tier 2 as well. I always just put tackle because I feel like both of them are that important. But, center is something we've got to get shored up, though. If Elton's the guy, great. But if one of these centers that in the draft that, obviously are going to be maybe in the second to fourth round, if they fall right in your lap, that might be the best case scenario as well. I don't know, man. I shudder to think about us drafting another second or a third round center and end up being Josh Myers for 4 more years.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here going, we did it again, boys. We did it again. We did it at safety forever.
Yeah. The way that just watching the way Jared Wilson ran, though, he really does start popping off the page to me. And if we could get him like early third, mid third, late third, I would absolutely run that up to the podium. Just seeing how physical he was. It was pretty cool. And I think, let me see. He didn't do too well on the bench. I don't see him up in the top contenders here, but that's all right. He doesn't need to be a bruiser.
Yeah, so we've got Jared Wilson as our top center. He's in the 87 spot currently. He get the maximum bonus, so he balled out obviously at the combine. He's sitting right there with the likes of Luke Kandra, and I'm trying to see if there's another offensive lineman. Chase Lunt slightly ahead of him at tackle, but he is definitely our top center in the draft. He may even be higher than Gray Zabel. I'm not 100% sure there. Let me see if I can find that real quick because obviously many people are seeing Gray Zabel.
Yeah.
Gray Zabel's in the 52 spot. So seeing that he's versatile, I think many people would see him as the top center if you wanted to put him at center.
Yeah, there's another couple of updates I can give you guys here because today the big hog mollies went out and did the bench press. So leading all of the offensive linemen with 33 reps was Luke Kandra, the guard out of Cincinnati. But guess who was number 2? Did you see that by chance, Clayton?
Mm-hmm.
Our boy Armand Membu came in with 31 reps, followed by Jackson Slater, also with 31. Clay Webb, a guy that I've been trying to pound the table for, is a very late round steal. Clay Webb is a center/guard out of Jacksonville State. He had 29 reps. John Williams, the guard out of Cincinnati, had 29. Miles Frazier, guard out of LSU, had 27. Logan Brown, another offensive tackle out of Kansas that I feel like we should take another look at, 26 reps. And then Gray Zabel, also at 26 reps. And then Ursay from Minnesota also had 25. And then it kind of falls off.
You mentioned Clay Webb there at guard out of Jacksonville State. We've got him in the 115 spot. He graded out really well on PFF, but obviously smaller school. You got to kind of be a little bit aware of that, but it just depends on what their level of competition was for sure. So, all right, there you go. So we got that poll question answered. What you got?
Prince said that Jonah Monheim, who you guys know, is kind of my quote unquote, I don't want to say he's a draft crush, but he's definitely one that I like at the center position for the positional value you could get him. Prince says that Jonah Monheim not participating in the combine drills may freeze him there in the 4th or 5th round area. I think that's great. I love that.
Yeah. We've got him in the 127 spot right now, and he is a center/guard. So, is he lit up in the blue? Let me make sure. He is. Okay, good deal.
Yeah.
So Jonah Monheim in the 127 spot. So you got several candidates, right? Like above him in the 119 spot is Jake Majors out of Texas, right? Mm-hmm. Another center. So you got a few of those guys kind of lurking around that area. But above him, Jacob Bayer out of Arkansas State. He's in the 113 spot. And again, our board isn't final yet, but it's starting to really come together. So Really looking forward to getting all the RAS data in. And then, of course, Daniel Jeremiah's top 150, 33rd team's top 150, Dane Brugler's top 150, or however many he's got. So it's going to be a blast getting that finalized. So, all right, let's move it back to X real quick. And you just keep popping up chats, anything you see, Jacob. But I'm going to hop back over here and let's kind of walk through what we learned today. I thought this was cool. Jalen Noel tweeted out, the height doesn't matter with a laughing emoji. Obviously, his vertical jump, 41.5 inches, broad jump, 11'2", and then his 40-yard dash was a 4.39. So Jalen Noel continuing to turn heads.
Dude,
as he just had a monster.
You know what's even crazier than that? I mean, obviously, those are great stats. He ranked number 1 out of all wide receivers with 23 reps at 225. The next highest guy was Jack Besh with 19. So he beat him by 4 reps. I mean, the guy he's just a stud.
That's
man.
wild. And, going back to my lifting days, let me tell you what I used to look. Now, short arms, right? It's typically the key. People with the longer arms, a little bit harder to bench press. I wonder what his arm length is, because you can be a little bit manipulated in that regard. But 23 reps? Is that what you said, Jacob? I remember
23. Yep.
Yeah. For someone his size, still phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, we used to have these guys in the weight room back when I was lifting, and they'd have those short little arms and they'd bounce it off their chest, 8 inches off their chest in the air. But all you had to do was lie out there. So,
dude, that's funny you said that. So his arms are 29.5. That's the 10th percentile. So he's got some little tiny T-Rex arms.
Yeah, little bitty arms. It sounds silly, but wingspan matters as a receiver, catch radius and all that. Mm-hmm. Tetairoa McMillan is one that just continues to fascinate me. I say that, Jacob, because he could go top 10. He might fall out of the top 20. I think that dude.
That's crazy.
Everything I'm seeing, he looks like he's going to be a stud. But I mean, anybody can bust out. We talk about it all the time. So, Jalen Noel again, and shout out to Tim, who is doing the countdown to the draft. Frankie Bag of Donuts winners, the Claymaker Matthews and Rashawn Bain Gary days away until the NFL draft. So we are 52 days from the NFL draft. Really excited about that. So more draft news here. The Tennessee Titans zeroing in on their choice with the number 1 pick. Ian Rappaport tweeted out, as the Titans evaluate the top players and their plans at number 1, they'll host some key prospects over the next week. So they're going to host Miami quarterback Cam Ward. That's going to be on Friday. Penn State edge defender Abdul Carter will be on Thursday. Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders will visit Monday. And then Colorado cornerback / wide receiver Travis Hunter visits later. So they are really starting to zero in there. All 4 of those, by the way, guys, would be worthy of the number 1 pick for us for the most part. Like if we were to hop back here, and I'm not going to pull the board up, I'll just kind of give you an idea of where we have these guys. Travis Hunter, we have as the top prospect in the draft. Okay. Abdul Carter, we have as the number 2 prospect in the draft. And then Cam Ward is the number 8 prospect in the draft, but you guys know how quarterbacks are treated 1 tier higher than where they were when they are. And then Shedeur Sanders is sitting in the 14th spot. Now, I think we've got another tweet relating to Shedeur that we'll get to here in a second. But what do you think about this with Tennessee at number 1? Obviously, they've got our boy Will Levis down there doing mayonnaise commercials. Do you think they still might hold out hope for him to be the future? Or you think this is the year they pull the trigger on the quarterback?
I mean, it seems odd to me that not more people are talking about them just running up the ticket to get a quarterback. I don't see. I've never been a Will Levis fan. I've never really honestly given him the time of day. From what I've seen of him play in college and in the pros, I never was impressed by really anything he does. Don't like the Mayo commercials either. I do like Mayo. That guy puts it on everything from what I remember him talking about. So if I'm the Titans fan base, I have no idea why you wouldn't be insisting that it's either Cam Ward or Shedeur. I mean, I lived in Nashville. I'm not talking bad about, but I'll tell you this. It was rare if I met a Tennessee Titans fan while I lived in Nashville. Very rare. There was a lot of, and again, I lived in Nashville on Broadway, so that's just everybody comes from a different city kind of thing. But it took a while for me to find like quote unquote diehard Tennessee Titans fans. We could go there. We'd buy tickets like 10 minutes before the game for like $30. I'd be wearing my Rashawn Gary jersey. My roommate Moonshine would be wearing a Dallas jersey, and we'd just go sit there. And then you'd walk up into the front row like in the second quarter, and nobody would stop you. Like it was, we'd go there to rip on other fan bases and just get drunk. That was basically what we'd do. But I just, that being said, I mean, there has to be a contingency of Titans fans that are banging the table like, dude, get us one of these stud quarter. Cam Ward, I just think is too good to pass up. I'm not quite sold on Shedeur yet. I think a lot of it, he's living in his father's shadow and getting a lot of hype from it and playing at Colorado. But what's your opinion? I know, weren't you a Will Levis guy at one point?
Yeah, the thing that got me with Will Levis, he wasn't like my top quarterback in the draft, but I try to break things down into 4 categories when it comes to a quarterback. And I've actually been pretty successful predicting who's going to be the good quarterbacks just with my personal opinion. The draft board, I don't let my personal opinion sway the draft board at all. You guys know, you've seen the recipe now. We let the board do the work. But Will Levis did have a quick release. He had a strong arm. His decision-making was always a question coming out, and that's probably the most important thing. So, he wouldn't grade that high in terms of pre-snap read, post-snap decision-making. Quick release, pretty decent. Felt like his accuracy was okay as well. Those are the 4 things I think are most important. The ability to pre-snap read, post-snap adjust, and read on the fly post-snap, quick release, and accuracy. I think all the great quarterbacks in the history of the game had all of those 4 traits. So, I could dive into these guys and tell you how I feel a bit different. But I will say this, the rumor mill is stirring from the combine. And Shedeur Sanders, it sounds like, rubbed people the wrong way with his interviews.
Right? J. Cole.
Look at that.
J. Cole says verbatim, as Clayton's basically saying it. It says, apparently Shedeur rubbed some people the wrong way. He's cocky, apparently. Some of this stuff is BS. One thing that I've learned is people hate self-confidence. So like we've talked about before, it's lying season. It is the type of season where you're going to start saying whatever you can to try to maybe make a player rise or fall just to make your situation better. Like Prince is saying here, he's Deion's son is cocky. No way.
No way.
What are the chances? So that, take everything with a grain of salt. I understand that, but I don't. Fred
Farley says they rubbed himself the wrong way.
So Turtle says he literally blamed his O-line for the losses. If he's that type of a player, I could see a lot of teams just saying, I don't need that in the locker room.
Yeah. 2-0 for this says he rubbed people like AFAM rubs his Pat Mahomes voodoo doll. So, all right. So now, before these reports came out, I watched his interviews and everything. And if I'm being 110% honest, I felt the same way. And I don't look at someone being cocky like, do I want them on my team? I always try to run everything through a filter of remove the emotion and think of the great quarterbacks in the history of the game. And would they have interviewed that way? You understand what I'm saying? Like, would Tom Brady have interviewed that way? No, he wouldn't have. We know he wouldn't have. Now, he went to the owner of the Patriots once he was drafted and said, I want you to remember my name. I'm the best decision you've ever made. Peyton Manning told the Colts GM, if you pass up on me in this draft, I'm going to kick your ass for the next 15 years. Told him that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But when it's just kind of trying to act cool and just, got all the bling hanging out everywhere, and it just, I don't know, man. Tell me the last quarterback to do that in the league that was great. And I could be missing a bunch of them, I'm just trying to think of a quarter. Think of the name off just the first names that come to mind for you, Jacob, when it comes to the quarterbacks in the history of the game, some of the best quarterbacks.
Some of the best?
Yeah, just in the history of the game. Just name
Marino, Elway, Favre, Montana, Steve Young, Jeff George.
Right. Did any of them? Yeah, you said Jeff George. Boy, everybody expected him to be good, and he ended up being
Willie Beeman, definitely. Yeah,
Willie Beeman. You understand what I'm saying, though? All those guys you named off, I couldn't see them acting like that at an event where you refuse to even perform, too. That's the other thing. Like the whole point was to go and interview and put your best foot forward, and you're coming away kind of looking like it's all about you and about attention. That's not a good look. Now, here's the deal. if he's a baller, if this transfers over from college to pros, none of that's going to matter. He's going to be a superstar, and people will not even talk about it. 2-0 for this, says Rex Grossman. That dude is 125% Caucasian, no doubt about it. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I seen it. And then you look at people like C.J. Stroud, a couple years ago, just humble as all get out. And then you've seen it translate to the field. Had a great rookie year, took a little step back next year, probably expecting him after the sophomore slump to take another step forward. Jordan Love, one of the most humble dudes you'll ever meet, and that doesn't mean you're not confident. Like, you can tell Jordan's confident in his ability, but I don't know how else to say it, man. I can name off a half a dozen quarterbacks that I really like in the league, and every one of them, to me, it seems like they've got enough self-awareness, enough social IQ to know. And all social IQ is your ability to understand how other people perceive you. That's all that is. That's what social IQ means. You ever been with that person in a room with a group of people and going, this guy is making an ass out of himself and he doesn't even realize it?
He thinks he's killing it right now.
Oh yeah. He's date mock. That's what it is.
That's exactly it, dude.
So again, now this is what I'm talking about. There's one, Chuck Jagers, Joe Namath, great example. How long ago? You know what I'm saying? Because it is a great example. Joe Namath, Broadway Joe was a hell of a quarterback, but he was cocky, man. There's no two ways about that. Joe Falco. I don't know if he meant Shane Falco or Joe Flacco.
Hey, I love Joe Flacco. All my buddies give me crap about it. Ryan Fitzpatrick. He was a little flashy there with the chest hair and the. Yeah, I mean, but honestly, think about it. Like the one that comes to mind right away is the biggest bust in my modern, Johnny Manziel.
Bingo.
Coming in, just being an arrogant, what?
It's the same stuff we said about Caleb Williams last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the same. Now, I have not seen Shedeur Sanders pull the antics that Caleb Williams has up to this point, right? So that's a good thing. But Caleb Williams just always seemed like he was all about himself,
You know who I think someone that flirted with being a Manziel that ended up turning the ship back over and now has had a pretty darn good career?
I think I know who you're talking about. Say it at the same time. 1, 2, 3.
Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
Exactly.
Cam Newton was loud AF and still is. And here's the thing about Cam. Cam had a good run there for 2 or 3 years, right? Won an MVP. How many championships did he win? It's like and you guys remember the Super Bowl. Please tell me you remember this. That fumble that he refused to dive on in the Super Bowl, he just I ain't getting in there. It's like, telling you, man, there's signs. There are signs. Just like if I hit the lottery, I will not tell anybody, but there will be signs. Okay. You're going to have a shortage of what would there be a shortage of if I ever hit the lottery, Jacob? What do you think?
I got a joke, but I can't say it.
Never mind then. Let's move it along. All right. So there's your Shedeur Sanders and quarterback talk. Again, obviously the Packers aren't looking to take a quarterback unless one of these guys dropped, sank out of sight and fell right in their lap. And Goody had a Brooks, unbelievable.
That's
they had a great grade on them, right? But we got to talk about it because this is what steers the draft, man. This is what drives the draft and how that's what's going to determine who falls, how far. The more quarterbacks taken in the first round, that's what we're looking for. So if I could climb up here, I'm going to come back to that tweet here in a second, but I wanted to jump right into this since we're talking about it. Jackson Dart, okay. JPA Football on Twitter said, rumors, 2 teams strongly believe that quarterback Jackson Dart will be selected within the top half of the opening round. So I think they're talking about the first round there. When he said opening round, I'm like, damn, are we playing golf? What are we doing here? But the first round, they're thinking Jackson Dart will be a first-round pick. Now, we talked about this a few weeks ago, Jacob, if you'll remember. Started to pick up a little bit of steam there. I'm going to go to the draft board. Let's see exactly where we've got him now. We've got Jackson Dart in the 73 spot. So in no way, shape, or form do we see him as a first-round quarterback. I've actually got Jalen Milroe significantly higher than Jackson Dart. And I know I'm probably the only person on the face of the earth that has my board sitting like that. I've got Jalen Milroe sitting in the 55 spot. Now, I felt like this about several quarterbacks last year, and lo and behold, we ended up getting, 5 or 6 quarterbacks went in the first round. Teams will overdraft for quarterback. There's no doubt about it. There's 2 drafts every spring, as Greg Cosell says, a quarterback draft and an NFL draft. So I don't know how you feel about Jackson Dart, man. Do you feel like do you think he'll go in the first round? Because it's PFF, I mean, he was off the charts his entire career in college.
Yeah.
What do you think, man?
I could see it. I think it's going to be a domino effect of what happens in this offseason going forward. I think a lot of it starts with what happens with Sam Darnold and whether or not they're going to keep him. Because if not, then that line keeps going. What happens with one of the Steelers quarterbacks? What happens in Vegas? What happens all the way over there? Because if all these puzzle pieces kind of fall into place, then maybe a team is not looking at him like they need to get up into the first to get him. If they, like you said, maybe let him fall to you in the mid-second, or if he does make it into, that's a great point. He does feel like this year's Bo Nix, where he's kind of.
I was going to say, I don't know if I agree with it until I hear an interview. I just know this, Jacob. Last year, if you guys were listening to the show, I caught an interview and I played a clip of it on the show where Craig Cosell interviewed Bo Nix on his podcast. Man, did he. I was like, this kid gets it. And lo and behold, you got, what's his name out there in Denver, the coach?
Sean Payton.
Yeah, Sean Payton seen him, was like, that's my dude right there. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's first thing that came to mind there for sure.
No, I think that's a great combination. And like you said, it'll probably come down to how he interviews and what kind of poise he has and all that stuff. But I wouldn't, man, if I was a betting man, I'd say 70% that he does go into the first. But
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if he falls into that mid-second and somebody takes a stab at him. I agree with you, though. I think Jalen Milroe is a much more interesting prospect, that if he falls, I think you got in my head because a lot of the mocks I've been doing lately, I'll just randomly sneak a quarterback in there.
Right.
Like, dang it.
You got to be careful for sure. All right, let's go back to where we were here. We already hit on the poll question. We got the Isaiah McDuffie news. So here is some T. Higgins news as he's officially off the market, at least for the time being. Ari Mirov tweeted out, the Bengals are placing the franchise tag on T. Higgins for a second straight year. So obviously they'll get hit with that 120% cap hit. It doesn't mean they can't trade him, Jacob. It's just them securing his rights so they can at least get something for him, work out a new deal, or have another solid receiver on their team. You guys know how I felt about this. I was not okay with trying to pay T. Higgins $30 million a year, 25 to $30 million a year. I just haven't seen enough in that regard. But it looks like, at least for the time being, he's going to stay in Cincinnati. What do you think about this? Does this bother you at all? Were you hoping the Packers might have a shot at him, or how do you feel?
Realistically, I never thought the Packers were actually going to sign him, and I honestly wouldn't want them to spend that much money. Bengals, they got a lot of people to sign with. Thanks, Tool, for this. They got a lot of people to sign, and when it's all done, they're going to look around, I think, after they've signed maybe 2, 3, 4 guys, and they're like, we have no money left for a while now. So I'm cool with it. Have you heard any of the theories about people trying to have him do it like a tag and trade?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying here is like that could be what the Bengals are thinking about doing, because it does give them a little bit more time. Obviously you got to carry that tag there. You got to carry that tag when the new league starts. You got to have that cap hit allocated, right? But this might buy them a little bit of time to put a trade together for sure. I think that's probably the more likely scenario, but at the same time, they may be willing to they got to be willing to pony it up now, because if no teams come calling, they're stuck with it, and it's fully guaranteed. So, I think it's a possibility, though. I do. All right, let's move it along here. Thought this was interesting. Tom Silverstein, we talk about Spoon all the time, works for the Journal-Sentinel. Jaden Higgins, Savion Williams among the big fast receivers the Packers could be targeting in the 2025 NFL draft. So it's obvious now that Tim is working a second job running Tom Silverstein's Twitter page here. So we know that without a doubt. Let's see where Jaden Higgins is sitting now, and we'll also look Savion up here. But it's pretty cool, man, to see Tim's guy continue to get talked about, as he is now officially in the 60 spot on our board. He's slowly creeping up, and we don't even have an RAS for him yet either. So once we get an RAS, he's liable, with that size, he's liable to get a 5-point bonus, which if he got a full RAS and nobody else changed, that would put him right around the 54 spot for us now. At one point, I had him down around 80. So he is really, really skyrocketed up the board throughout the offseason for sure. What do you think, man? You think the Packers realistically could take Jaden Higgins maybe in the second round?
I really do. I hope that they do. That big bodied receiver, like they talked about, it's hard to find people with those types of skill sets. They've mentioned Savion Williams out of TCU. He's 6'4", 222. He ran decent with a 4.48. But again, I want to throw another guy into that mix was Deontay Thornton Jr. out of Tennessee, 6'5", 205, ran a blazing 4.3 flat. Yeah. So if Jaden Higgins unfortunately gets past us, we could still come around for a few different draft picks throughout the draft and get that kind of big stud receiver that we've been looking for that's fast.
Yeah. Kevin Realms in the chat here over on X. Appreciate you swinging through, buddy. He says, who do you want the Pack to get in the first 2 rounds? It's a boring answer, Kevin, but for me, it's the best player, 2 best player available, 2 best players on the board, right? If you're saying in a perfect scenario, what position would you like to get filled? For me, it would be 3-tech. I would love to see 3-tech, and probably it depends on if Ja is going to be on the team or not. And I don't know what the hell is going to happen there, to be honest with you, Jacob. It kind of feels like now the Packers might try to call his bluff and wait it out because obviously the trade comp isn't there. It looks like it's probably a 5th or a 6th round pick is what some people are saying. Fans are going to roast Goody if he only gets a 5th or a 6th round pick for Jair Alexander. After he got a 3rd for Rasul Douglas, like that's a tough look, man. But yeah, in terms of the first 2 rounds, I really think we got to shore up 3-tech. That's just me. What I mean by 3-tech, Kevin, is defensive tackle that lines up in the B gap. Kenny's going to be gone here in a year or 2, probably, the way the contract really steps down. You can free up some cap if you want to move on. Although he was pretty darn good against the run, believe it or not, with his run stop percentage last year and him playing that touch spot we talked about so much during Chalk Talk. But yeah, I don't know, man. For me, I keep coming to 3-tech and I keep coming back to interior offensive line. We got to get center shored up. So in a perfect world, give me the 2 best players on the board. And it just so happens that those 2 best players, Jacob, whenever you take them, are the position that you need, and that's 3-tech and center. That's me.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind if we did something like a Gray Zabel or some sort of stud offensive lineman. And then kind of like you said, I would prefer us to do